Hi there. Dave Marks is not only an incredible bass player and composer and band leader and groovy guy and Irish, but he's also on my YouTube channel, Radio Richard. This guy gives you the best advice you could possibly want on touring, being a professional musician, working with great stars, and everything else. So please check out my 4-part interview with Dave Marks, the man and his music. See you there.
I talk about this thing of attitude versus altitude. You're on a big gig, but everything that you've said so far has expressed exactly the attitude that Dave Marks is famous for. And that is a level headed approach to the thing, which is also a very in service to the music approach. Now, in general, how many people that you tour with in general, not just on this gig, but you've been doing gigs for a long time now. What percentage of musician has that love and is having to? I think it depends on the scene that you're working in. So I used to tell the students all the time, if you treat it that there are 4 levels in the music industry. So the bottom one is kind of pub gigs and doing things with friends for fun. The next one is like professional bands. So that might be playing weddings or doing corporate events. The third one would be artists, and this could be emerging artists or established. And the top one is like arena tour, huge artist. Yeah. It was one of the weird things that I always encourage them. It doesn't matter which gig you're on, play it with a level 4 attitude. Right. Because if you're on a level 2 gig and someone sees you and thinks, I have a level 4 thing, they're level 2. And they're real at it, but they're not ready for this thing. By playing with that, by showing up with that level 4 attitude, performing with that level 4 attitude, you're more likely to get pushed up the thing. And also, if someone does call you and say, can you come and do this show? You don't go, oh God, I'm not ready for this. You go, yeah, this is the thing that I've been getting ready for the whole time. And now I'm ready for it. Exactly. So I think it depends on the level of the work that you're doing, how many of those musicians you encounter who are going to be super duper together. On level 1, there are people who will do gigs for beer. They're not taking it too serious. No, they're approaching the whole thing as whatever, just do the job. Again, the wedding and event band thing, some people get locked into a repeated routine of what that is, and it becomes like a goof where it's more interesting for them, the playing, than the music or the gig, or it's more interesting for them to get drunk and whatever. Yeah. As soon as you're playing for established artists, there is a rigor with which you have to approach the parts. So if you're trying to recreate the parts from record and you just play whatever you want, somebody, either the artist or the record company, is going to come and say, this isn't right, song doesn't sound the way it should. No. So instantly you have to have a certain level of seriousness as a musician at that line. And when you get to the level 4 things, they expect you to either be able to perfectly recreate something or bring your own ideas. Yeah. And then oscillate between the two, that if we say that idea doesn't work, okay, well, you know what? Right. Take directions very, very uncertain. For me, as a guy who hires musicians all the time, I walk into a studio and they say, look, I've written everything out very precisely. That's what I do. It's my own little perversion, but that's what I do. But on the other hand, if you come up with a better idea, of course, I'm happy for you to play that better idea, and then I'll take credit for it. But nevertheless, I always want to give the musician freedom within restriction. And I think the most freedom that you can have as a musician is in restriction. I think you as a composer, I think would agree, as I have always felt about composing, is once you've been very precise about your template of what you're trying to say. I'm writing about cheesecake, and I want everything to be super cheesecakey, and I've made this tremendous construction on the page which says cheesecake. But on the other hand, once in a while, it's nice to deviate from it a little to say, well, I have no contrast from cheesecake, so maybe I should have say twice to it. Or maybe I should have citrus over here. I mean, so, and I think that's what you're talking about in a more cheesecake One of the latest projects I've been doing is a thing called the Limitless Orchestra, which is another thing Hans involved in. Yes. And it has 30 something musicians in this big ensemble, and we play some of Hans's music. And the first show we did it was called Global Waltzing from Strauss to Zimmer. Nice. And we were basically doing things where we fused together Hans Zimmer and Johann Strauss themes. Right. Or we would reinterpret stuff and turn them into waltzes. Right. And I said to the rest of the guys in the band, because we're all there sort of doing things, Alexei Goodisman, the violinist who runs the whole thing, is like, well, people to be free and to have fun with this material and stuff. But I said, the thing to remember is within that freedom, you need to stay aware of what the intention is with the particular piece of music. So if the bit we're doing is Irish, make it as Irish as you can. Yes. And improvise within that style. Yes. But if you come into the Irish thing and you think, I'm going to play something that's, Brazilian or it's the music, exactly. That was the classic one. You're setting up this giant ambience with, we're all playing like some harmonic minor or some kind of Eastern sounding thing. Yeah. And somebody was beep bop, you're like, dude, I dig it, but you're not on the right. And what it does is, in the effect of what we're trying to create on stage, you just suddenly have this bizarre random thing. Right, caught aside. Now, burst a boat. Yeah. So for me, that thing is always about having a sensitivity to the intention of what the music's doing. Exactly what you were saying before. Once everybody's on board with what we're trying to achieve, you can improvise and be yourself and express it. But as long as we're all pointed in the same direction. Yeah. And sorry, something you asked me earlier, which I didn't get to, was what percentage of musicians you said are serious about stuff. I think it goes at your level, but in the lower levels of like level 1 type gigs, you can encounter, I'd say maybe 20%, if even there's a small number that dig it this seriously. By the time you get to level 4, almost everybody. And the only ones that aren't, as you would say, level headed, you get a lot of quite quirky, spectrum-y type, income myself on that to some degree. People who are very idiosyncratic in their approach, and they can sometimes socially a little bit complicated, but it's part of that condition that makes them incredible when they play. Right. And so we all at that level learn how to live and work with each other in a way that is as kind and compassionate towards them, but also gets the best out of everybody. So that's great. I'm going to end with a very contentious subject, which is, there's no other way for me to say it, sex on tour, right? Because, I have been on tours, even on, where there has been a lot of that going on, and it's never a good idea. How many times is it a good idea? Never, yeah. And there's approximately never. There's the approximately never. And there's an old saying about don't see with the where you like, the turn. Yeah. For you Americans, they call the turn is the star. The star, yes. And no matter what happens, the advice is always don't do it. And yet people do it. And even the problems, not just with the star, which I've seen happen to great sadness, but also with each other, where, the guitar player is sleeping with one of the backing vocals. It's just a mistake. Yeah. But I want you to tell them why it's a mistake. These kinds of things are always a fantastic idea in the incredibly short term, but life, hopefully, is not in the incredibly short term. Yeah. And if you think of the way that, I'm going to compare this to like how a Labrador approaches food. If you put food in front of them, they'll just eat it. Right. They'll eat it until they're sore. They'll eat it until they're sick. If there's more, they'll keep going. You need to think about things in a slightly more sophisticated way than the Labrador. Right. Because ultimately you've taken on this gig and you'd like it to continue going on. And there's nothing that will sour your chances of staying in the band than having some sort of relationship with the turn, which then goes sour and now you're just gone. Yeah, it's just, you're out. It can also become complicated if somebody decides that they want to make an advance on one of the other band members and they don't want it. And now it's all reasons, I guess. Yeah, and all that. Yeah. In general, it's weird in different things. I'll give you an example in our show. I know that the band we were sort of separate in a sense from the orchestra and choir. Because there's like 70 It's a huge stage. Yeah, and then you bring the crew and the regular stuff. There must be 140, 150. Exactly. Exactly. I have no idea what those people get up to in their own time when they're doing things. Why? Because I have my own little missions. So while I was away doing the tour, we do the gig thing. And when I come away from the gig thing, I had arrangements to write for the Limitless Orchestra. Right. There was a number of theatre shows in Northern Ireland I was working on the European sport. And then I also did things where I would get the guys in the band to come backstage and we would jam together or work out little arrangements for things for social media. And we would just shoot a little. I would have two mics, two mic stands and two mic cables. I would bring mics and I would set up in the green room and say, if anybody wants to come and play today, I'll be there from 5:30 until 6:30. And we would do little flamenco things or little jazzy funk things. I got the choir in singing in Swahili. Really beautiful. And it also meant that we had a reason to come together that wasn't just the work. Yeah. It was a fun thing. I'd say, what do you want to sing? And then I would make something, put it out of mind, tracks it put together. And those sorts of little projects, the big problem with touring is it's the same day over and over again, except nothing is the same. Yeah. So it's a sound check, but it's a sound check in a new place. It's dinner, but it's different catering in a different country. Right. But it's the same basic things, just the details are changed. Right. And it can drive people nuts because the repetition of it, and when you settle into it, it's repetition of the show, right? So I would have these overarching projects that would provide, instead of this repeat, it provided an arc the whole tour. Yes. So by the time we finished the whole thing, I had made a video of Wonderful World, the Armstrong, that I had rearranged with, I had a Zimbabwean singer, a flamenco guitarist. We put together a little arrangement, and then one by one, every member of the band, either backstage, in a hotel room, or on stage, wherever, and I was writing an arrangement. We would go, we record them, video them playing, and we all get put together. Yeah. And having things like that where you have your own little mission that you're on, yeah, stops you from getting bored. When people get bored, they will drink. That's it. When people get bored, they will start looking for distractions. Right. Right. And a lot of the time, those distractions will be things that they're never good at. Exactly. Well, this is all fantastic, unique, beautiful advice from a beautiful guy, Dave Marks. I've known him for so long, and it's not long enough. Okay. So we've got more. We've got more time. Got more. We got to have some fun together soon. Yeah. But meanwhile, thank you, Dave, and look out for all the great music he's doing. DaveMarks.com, is it? Yeah. Well, you can't get a more fun website than that. So go to that. And of course, subscribe to Radio Richard, my YouTube channel, because it's more fun than a barrel of small puddings. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Radio.